me on and on. Ooh, Fio headphones. Mute. So, this is going to be not a two-part review like I do with the LA90D. This is just going to start here on the desk and end in the speaker testing arena. Because this is the Black Ice Audio Fusion F11. And it's pretty big. And it's pretty fucking powerful as not just a headphone amplifier, but as a speaker amplifier. We'll get to the back of it either here or over there, I'm not sure. Timestamps again, and don't forget to check out my Patreon and Subscribestar. Please help support this channel. Like Black Ice does, they're actually sending me over to Munich with a portion. I sold something of theirs, and they're like, here, use the profits to go to Munich. So it's nice of them. But this thing, this is not their biggest tube amp. In fact, this is the 11, and you could tell me how the naming schemes work, because there's the 10, which I have over there, which is a little cube within glass. It's cool as shit. This is the 11 for $1,875, so one gemstone in the title. We're not quite at 2. Then the next one is $2,500, and the next one is $3,000. These are all American-made tube amps. I want to point this out. It's not China. And it's like, well, for $1,800, yes, I expect it to be American-made. Yeah, but do you expect a tube amp, which just happens to have the courtesy of a headphone out, which is why we're starting here? This can put 22 watts maximum out of the rear of it for speakers. 22 watts. So now, think in your head, okay, wait a second, Zeo, didn't you review a bunch of tube amps for speakers that are like 8 watts? Isn't that Audiophile Solaris, 8 watts per channel and $4,000 without the DAC? Yeah. I mean, that's made in Germany by a man who has unfortunately passed away. Remember you forever, man. He was so fucking cool. But yeah, now, okay, so now, again, American-made tube amp, made of glass, with touch interfaces and a remote control for speakers, happens to do headphones, $1,875, and it comes in black or this much fucking sexier silver. I'm kind of sad I didn't get the silver, but the black is kind of cool. It's a black ice, and then there's a silver. But now let's look at the bigger ones. So $1,875, I'm going to get these other ones. I'm going to demand them. $2,500 for the F22, which is, by the way, a name of an airplane. 75 watts maximum. 75 speaker watts maximum. And then if we just jump up to the 35, which, by the way, isn't the F35 also F11? What? Hold on a second. Are all of these named after American fighter bombers? Because we have the F11, the F22, and the F35. And for $3,000, you get 85 watts of output. 85 watts of output. Do you grasp the concept of a tube amp, not a hybrid, a pure, insane tube amp that can put out 85 watts? I don't know, it says 60, but then it's maximum 85. So that's all dumb. Everything I just said is dumb, and for that shouldn't, the price doesn't even make sense, because it's like $1,800 is a lot, and then $2,500 is more, but it's like triple the power, and then like, it's only like $500 extra to make like another 10, but what the let's talk about this amplifier. Touch interface in the front for everything. You put it on standby by pushing the Black Ice logo. You can, this has got a headphone, a picture of a headphone, which we could also hit the picture of the headphone here. And you would think, in all logical sense and terms, that hitting the headphone on-off would turn the headphone out on and off. It does not. What the headphone on-off does is when you put the headphone on, it turns off the speakers. And then when you put the headphone off, it turns on the speakers. But the headphone amp doesn't actually change, because it's just doesn't. You have 4 inputs here, although there is 5 labeled in the back. You get your headphone, which is a 1/4 inch out. This company, by the way, since they're small and they build these like almost individually, you could call them up and be like, hey, could you put a 4.4 in here, even if you don't actually have it balanced? And they'll probably do it, although I don't know if they can modify the glass. I'm pretty sure they bulk order this glass when they get it done. But fuck, they might put one here. Now, here's the thing. The top is carbon fiber looking. I don't think it's carbon fiber. Yeah, it's just an adhered thing to make it look good. But here's the thing. At $1,800, the fact that it's covered in touch panel glass, and by the way, this is also glass protecting the transformers. Yeah, I'll give them a pass on that. So headphone out, 4 input switches, standby button, back output mute, which is labeled headphone. Here's your logo. When you turn this off, I do have a problem with some of the choices they've made. Like, hey, I'm gonna turn it off the unit. Ready? It's gonna disable the tubes. It's off. That light's still on, that light's still on, and guess what? There's a light up there, and that light's still on. So the only thing that actually indicates if it's on or off is the tubes will physically glow, and the input selector will... Wait, it's warming up the tube. Warming it up. Still warming that tube up. Wait for it. Wait. All right, it's taking too long. I'm just put the camera back in my head. Ah, it's on. Okay, it's fucking on. So that's the only indicator, is that you see one of these on, which, by the way, you can do. Which I figured out, try to clean something off there. I was like, oh my God, I'm switching inputs so fast. And then to the right, you have a volume knob, which is actually really kind of tiny, considering the massiveness of this amplifier. But it's a fine knob. It's a fine knob. However, you'll notice I have the big knob passive here, which I haven't taken out in a while. I'll link to this. And I'm feeding the DAC. I have the Gishelli Labs DAC going into it, and I've got these beautiful DD Hi-Fi cables. I think they're like $80 a pair now. Some of the nicest, literally the nicest RCA cables ever. I got them going into it as the output into the amp. And I'm using this as my volume control and my mute, so I could... The reason for that is, this is a speaker amp with a lot of power, and they've taken the output and they've run it through some resistors to give you the headphone out. And they didn't run it through enough resistors to the headphone out. They don't want to damage the sound, like the actual tubey sound of it. I've tried plugging my adapter wire, like the ones that I built, into the speaker terminals in the back, and it's just too much. It is just too much for headphones, and there's noise that, it's not supposed to be getting like a 70 or 120 ohm load. It's like, no, I don't like it. So it is better to use the 1/4 inch output. However, if I lower this and then crank this to maximum, this is how the volume knob responds normally. I'll unmute that. So you get nothing, and then the music starts playing, and you've died. So, and that's on every headphone. I've got puddles of headphones here I've been trying. I've got the Taconi Cobalt, which I've already said are an amazing tube reacting headphone. If you haven't seen those, check out the Cobalt review. Unless it hasn't come out yet, and I've pushed this. It's fine. I got the 8XXs. The drop 8XXs. The new Fios are here, and I thought I'd give them a run for themselves in the tube. I've only heard them on my burn-in rig, so this is my first actual amplifier testing of them, which is interesting because I don't have a point of reference. Usually I have a point of reference. I've heard a headphone over and over and over on a regular standard solid state, but I'm starting on the tube, and I'm like, holy fuck, these pads need to be bigger. But if I come off of this to a normal solid state when I do the review of this in a couple days, then I'm going to be like, oh, I know who's a tube whore. HD280 Pros, probably the ones that show this off the best, and also the only ones that actually dictate the noise floor. I could actually hear the noise floor on the 280 Pros. If you don't know, these are like a $100, $200? I think they're still like $100. Close-back Sennheiser monitoring headphone, and one of the best, if you own a tube amp at all, I don't care what your budget is, I don't care how rich you are, I don't care how much of an asshole you are, if you own a tube amp, I don't care if it's a Nautilus for $9,000, spend $100. And then plug these into a solid state amplifier and go, oh, these are very neutral and clean and kind of narrow for a closed back monitoring headphone. You see them on podcasts all the time, which makes no sense because they're so fucking uncomfortable. They're so tight, like they're so tight. They're riding a roller coaster and don't get your, like they don't fall off. But when you plug them into a fucking tube, in fact, we're going to swap out now, since I'm improperly judging. Run out of space on my Magic Audiophile tripod. This is my Magic Velbon Audiophile tripod. It holds the Ghosts, the 880 600 ohms, which I tried in this, and it runs them, obviously. My cool Bat Ears microphone added Rode NHT 100s, or NTH 100s. Yes, they've got cute little bat ears. 630 Neumanns, and that was now. So yeah, the volume control is definitely not tuned for the headphone use of like these are not, some of these are not even mortal. The fucking 880 600 ohms are impossible to drive. So the fact that it's the same volume like limit of like made me bust out the big knob. So now I can take the big knob, lower that down, put this to about halfway has been my average. Pop on the uncomfortable as fuck, but my God, do I want to listen to them. Let's get off the White Stripes. As the White Stripes, I have all the White Stripes ever made. There's like 5 good songs, and the rest of them just sound like compressed garbage. Sorry, White Stripes fans. Yeah, like right there, Marilyn Manson, Just a Car Crash Away. And I'm like, the bass response and the creaminess that this adds to, if you have a headphone that responds to tubes, this will do its thing. I'm not 100%, I know my audience is pretty much like a headphone audience, and you guys love speakers, but how many of you are actually considering a tube amp for speakers? Well, usually it's because there's not enough power in the tube amp, but now 22 watts maximum, probably, I think it's 18.5 watts is like the nominal output. That's enough for most speakers. And if you're really into it, for a little bit more money, you can get the bigger ones that are like 3 times the power, which I have to really legitimately sit down and listen to and be like, because that's full power. 100 watts per channel or nearing 100 watts per channel is enough. Here's the remote, by the way. Big heavy piece of metal. I would normally, if you've watched any of my life hack videos, I like to cover the sides of metal remote controls with the soft foam of speaker surround insulator foam, so that you can grab it and it's kind of squishy and it doesn't get cold, and this is just cold metal. But ball bearings in there, which is kind of fucking cool. Mute that. Actually, no, we don't have to mute that. We could mute this, because you don't have the option to mute it on the face, but you have the option here. And you have many buttons. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, mute, headphone switch, power, next track, last track, up and down. Up and down is exactly what you think it is. The knob turns on its own. Oh, I get to use the stick. I don't get to use the stick very often. Let me use the stick, please. I literally keep it on my desk for this specific purpose. Well, that's gonna be bad. Click. Like a MacGyver or something, so that it kills you and it hits the bottom. It's like a Saw movie. So look at that. Look how beautiful and smooth that is. Now rip it off. Okay. I'm glad we got to do that. I would have been pissed if I would have remembered about this and then not had used it. So you get to control the volume remotely, which is going to be great when we're using it as a speaker amp in the second half of this video. For the headphones, that's not really important. The mute, which will blink this and shut that off, means it's muted. That's fine. And then you get next track, last track, which you're like, well, those can't do anything. But what they do, instead of having to go 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, instead of hitting the individual inputs, you can cycle through them with the last track, next track buttons. Which is kind of unfortunate, because I would have liked to have used these for next track, last track on FooBar using a FLIRC. Any chance I get to talk about a FLIRC, it's like $25. It's a little USB thing you plug into your computer, and it just receives infrared signals. In fact, there's one right here, this little tiny thing. That's how I'm using my Emotiva remote to next track, or, you know, navigate up and down and then hit enter, and it's great. Best $25 fucking I've ever spent. I own like 7 of them. But you can't do that with this because they were all taken. So that's the remote. That's the remote. Big heavy thing, little rubber nipple tits on the bottom. Nipple tits, that's what those are physically called. We got to talk about the top, because you're all like, oh, a gauge, and everyone loves gauges. So let me take the camera off my head for a second. That is your bias adjustment or testing thing. It's currently on off. If I turn it on, it lights up, and you can see I have it set. It's slightly under 40 right now. And if I go, and there's 4 settings, so 1, 2, 3, 4, voltage 1, voltage 2, voltage 3, and voltage 4. If I click through them, you'll see that we're roughly at the same level. Now, and then you can turn that off. That is legitimately like a pen test. It's like a gas tank test. All these have different voltages. There's 4 different voltages and 4 different biases for the different tubes. And you get to pull out a screwdriver And using the little adjustments through each one of these holes, you get to say, okay, you get to do the check. The most manly thing ever is to flip the switch and check the gauge. So if they were different, or if I didn't like, if one was too high or too low, I could go in and physically turn that and adjust it. Obviously, you wait till it's warmed up to do that. They tend to be off when you first start it up. But that's some fucking tube tweaky fucking madness. And if you swap tubes on this, because these are Russian-made Electro Harmonics. This is an EL84EH. This is a 12AX7 LPS. And this is a 12AX7WA. So we've got these two are different tubes from these two. And then I think these four are all the same EL84EH. So we got four same tubes. And then these two, and then these two are different. And you can swap them all out and do all sorts of fucking weird things with them. But once you're done doing that, you can use this to bias adjust on the fly. It's got a built-in monitor and bias adjust. Again, reminding you this is under $2,000 and made in America. And has all these options and features and power. We have to move over to the speaker section where I won't have to use this. I'll use something else. This, by the way, the Big Knob Passive, absolute fucking lifesaver for this, because I was a little bit nervous just going like too loud, too quiet, too loud, too quiet, too loud, too quiet. Like certainly couldn't use the remote, but I wanted to give myself some breathing room, and using a passive controller that you could actually just like set this, never touch it again, and then this is Postmodern Jukebox Rude featuring Von Smith. If you're alive, saying yes, hey yes, 'cause I need to know. Till the day I die. It sounds good. Headphone assessment of the F11. It sounds good. It's not quite the most tubey tube. I think it's got too much power and too much going into the resistors for that. Like, it's not dedicated for this purpose. I would say this is 85% as good as any tube amp I've ever plugged headphones into, which is a lot. I would still take something like the Solaris, and sometimes in some instances of these headphones, like the TA26, but like I know these are super low ohms, so they work so much better on this than that. But all right, moving over to speakers. Let those cool off before I jank this around, and we'll have a different wallpaper there. Both will be available in the wallpaper horde. Let's move. Let me just say one thing. This thing is heavy. Like, it is a beast to carry across. I don't know what it weighs. It feels like it weighs like 30 pounds. Let's look at the back before I get it all hooked up. Here are your 4 RCA inputs. I thought there was 5. I'm hallucinating. There's a record output, so it's just a loop through. You get a subwoofer output. Let that sink in. It's just a summed output of this. It's probably controlled, hopefully, I actually haven't tested it yet, probably controlled by the volume output of the front. That automatically makes this an $1,800. If it was just a box, okay. Then you get your ground connections for left and right, and then you have the choice between 8 ohms or 4 ohms for the speaker load. Most speakers, I'm probably going to try with these clips first, are going to be 8 ohms. You get a master power output cut in the back, so you don't have to use the digital one, or so you can actually turn the lights off. The light shouldn't be on if you stand by it. At least the one on top should be off, and the logo should be off. It should be more off than it's off. It's not currently off enough. That was my complaint, by the way, that all the lights stay on when you turn it off, and it's like, that's not enough off. And then use your AC input, and let's rotate this around and make it play the music. Cool. The Matrix is back. Mr. Robot. That is silentobserver.webm. So got them still on the Klipsch RP600M Mark IIs. By the way, 32 pounds. Looked it up. Shipping weight is like 40 something, but this fucker weighs 32 pounds. Again, $1,875 American, but 32 pounds of amplification. Just heavy. I actually have the subwoofer hooked up, but I'm doing a weird thing over here with the DBX Go Rack, because I actually integrated my surround sound input, and now I've inputted the input from this, and I had to disconnect the input from the DAC, which I was using. It's a whole thing. Anyway, if you don't know what subs I've got, hi. Dual Yamo C9 12s stacked on top of each other with added weight to the top of it so it doesn't bounce off the goddamn rollers. So I could just mute this, because DBX Go Rack, I wish you'd come back in like a new form. Give me a 2023 DBX, go rack, please, DBX. It's so fucking useful. Anyway, muting that. So now back to just pure speakers. And having just reviewed the RP600M and set up the Toxarides device's Achilles, the 8 watt per channel, 8 watt per channel tube speaker amps. I could, you know, this is twice as powerful, even if you only rate it at 18 and not the full 22. And I can fucking tell. Like, it's not usually with any tube speaker amp, you're sort of feeling that limitation. We're going to swap to, by the way, the Buchart S300 Mark 1s, which are the even harder to drive version, in a second. But I just want to tell you that, like, right here, right now, I've got the DAC, which you can see the DAC down there is the Own S8. I've actually got that at 110 out of 120, so not maxed out. Because I just, again, the volume control, I'm at least at 2 o'clock now to listen to this. So, but it's like, it's so much power. It's not a bad thing. This is not a negative. Hiromi Uehara, Summertime. Do you hear that? That's the sound of dishes in the background because I record these in jazz clubs, and apparently every jazz club just has someone fucking washing silverware on stage, which I'm not against because it sounds fucking awesome to just hear like the sounds of a kitchen. But it's like, it's supposed to mean like, oh, the recording is binaural and therefore we have not edited out anything. And there's a bunch of busboys just fucking fighting in the background with forks and shit. So, yeah, I put it in the 8 ohm output. I'm gonna swap it to the 4 ohm output for these. Because these claim to be 6 ohms, but that means between 6 and 4, so I'm gonna just knock them down a little bit. Because these are actually much harder to drive speakers. You don't have the efficiency of that great big horn. We're just gonna have this little dusty tweeter, and we'll see what it can do, because I know that these need power, and we may not have enough of it right now. Let's find the fuck out. James Horner. Break of dawn, so luckily there's 2 mute buttons on this, because I could set headphone output, which, as we discussed earlier, mutes the back outputs but not the headphone output, or we could mute it like mute. So we got dual mutes. In fact, we've double muted now. Now, I hear these speakers every once in a while. I pull them out like LA90D and stuff. And usually it's like, okay, they just need the specific amount of power. Holy fuck. I tried them for a split second on the 8 ohm output, and I'm like, all right, that's clear. And then I switched them to the 4 ohm output, and the bass response just... And this is not exactly like... This is James Horner, When Your Lover Has Gone, performed by Melora Hardin. And this is from the Rocketeer soundtrack, which is, by the way, top 10 movie of all time. Not just mine, but like lots of people's. And they're not as wide as the fucking clips are sitting, and they're sitting closer to me, but oh my God. Now I remember. These are a good reminder speaker of like, hey, this is why you spend money. I'm like, fuck, but I like being cheap. I haven't pulled out the RB42s yet. They live there on top of the Q Acoustics 3030Is. We might. We'll see. Although I think I would probably save those for like the F35, where they get the real power going. Because right now, on the 4 ohm output on this, I gotta listen. All right, I'm gonna stop the camera again, because I literally, this is the song I stopped and came back on. I gotta know. I gotta know if it's just like this because this song, or if it's just, hold on, I'll be right back. 2 things before I forget. Number 1, on the little knob, the little big knob, the big little knob passive over there, the fact that it had a mono button to sum the input so that it was feeding this mono meant I could hear if there was a discrepancy in the left and right, which was fantastic, by the way, and there wasn't one. And secondly, the subwoofer output, I talked about how it's going to that, but it is full range. So right now my subs in the corner are set to the highest frequency crossover because the surround sound is supposed to be controlling them. So that's a bit of a problem if you're using this where it's trying to feed full full range to it, and you have to go back to the sub and adjust the knob. I can do it here on the DBX slightly with the EQ, but just something to point out, you're going to have to take a full line signal and to deal with it if you're going to add a subwoofer. Now, I've moved the speakers out just a little bit more, a little bit closer, and this might be the best they've ever sounded. Like, that's a statement, considering I've had these for 6 years now. And the previous best they've ever sounded, by the way, was topping LA90, not the D. I had the two LA90s in monoblock, and I tried to use these with it, figuring it'd be even better, and it was worse because these are not 8 ohm, and the LA90 solid state, if you use it in monoblock, required you to use an 8 ohm speaker, and these are not, which is why I'm in the 4 ohm output. So I only have one LA90D, so I could monoblock those because they go down to 4 ohms. But right now, this is just tubing these speakers just enough. Because I keep looking at the thing and like, is it muted? Is it muted? Because there's subwoofer things happening. And it's like, nope, these are just these speakers. And this little tube amp, little 32-pound tube amp, is doing one hell of a fucking job on it. Can I get a copyright claim for the beginning of a song that starts with birds? You know, I have no qualms about saying this is the best these have sounded. The clips sounded good, better than they did on the Toxaritas devices, but these are different. These have made a huge difference. So I don't know how I'm not outputting full there, and I'm at 2 o'clock here on the volume knob. So we're not quite at the limits, not even close to the limits with these, and these are not easy to drive speakers. These are usually the ones I bring out to inflict a little bit of pain. The RB42s are a lot of bit of pain. Those are like, oh, look at these little cute speakers. Oh, your amp's on fire. Ha ha. So I think I have to, just for the sake of argument, put those on now. But Buchart S300 Mark 1s, they're passive speakers. I don't think Dragon Ball Z will get me copyright, but we'll have to double check that with the internet. I've got them on these wonderful oven mitts that I found at a dollar store somewhere in Pennsylvania, which are perfect little silicone things to protect your speakers. Nothing slides off. I thought it'd be fun to actually hit play for the very first time while we're listening together, so you can get my initial reaction of this. Oh, I paused the music. I should probably unpause the music as well. I'm not going to touch the volume. It was up pretty loud, but I have a feeling... Actually, we're on 4 ohm, and I think these are 8, so let's mute it again. I'll use the real mute this time. Come back here. We got to swap. Static electricity. I'll put you in the 8 ohm spot. These RI cables I'm using, these are the Italian-made ones, have those like pointy, like needle-looking things, and they kind of make me nervous. Oh, now we have to go back in my pants. Ladies. Ah, there we go. Okay. John Wick 3, I haven't seen 4 yet. I'm going to see 4 at some point. All right, the real test is going to be something bassy, so I'm going to lower this a little bit down in case for some reason it has too much power, or more likely, those little bastards distort the amp. I'll just shuffle around. Nightmare Revisited from the Nightmare Before Christmas. System of a Down. All right, you know what? Stopping the camera. I'll tell you how good it comes out. Ah! All right, I have the subs on, but fuck. All right, so definitely these are the hardest to drive speakers that Zeos currently owns. I had to raise the DAC fully to 120 out of 120, and we are still at 2, and I even had it like 3 o'clock, like getting to the point where I'm getting to tube distortion. That is not the amp's fault. Trust me. These are monsters. The only thing these sound perfect on, and this is why I recommend them, but it's like, look, get them, but are the 150 watt per channel with perfect no distortion Stark Crimson mono from Orchard Audio. Those are the only ones. Those is it. That's it. You get $1,900 up converted amplifiers, or you don't listen to RB42s to their maximum. And this is doing a fucking spectacular job. Like there, that's too much. That was just a bass note and it's too much. If I mute the sub, boom. You can hear it. It was like it did not like that. It did not like it. But they get certainly louder than I've ever had them on a tube amp before. So these will always be the benchmark. If you don't want to set to like $150 to $170, if you want to know if your amplifier is any good, break these in and then try to turn them up. And what will happen is your amplifier will quit before these do. And every amplifier I've ever tested them on has quit, except for the Stark Crimson. So yeah, when I get the bigger versions of this, the F11 and the F35, these will be the ones that come up last, because these are the great equalizer. So what I'm going to do now, it's Thursday, it's movie night. I got a couple hours before I have to go watch the original Police Academy. That was someone's pick. I'm going to do some sound demos. If you don't know what the sound demos are, I will record. I have a couple speakers to do. I'm going to do the Klipsch RP600M, and I might do them on the Black Ice. I might sound demo them fully with the $1,500 Neumann microphones on the Black Ice. And if you want to get to that, you have to be a supporter for $5 a month, Patreon or Subscribestar. You get to access the Sound Demo Oasis, where all the sound demos I've previously done, including the ones that have just appeared off YouTube, you could at least get to the audio of them. And all modern new sound demos, I film them and upload them only to the private Oasis, so I could use any music I want, any wallpapers I want. It's great. And we can actually listen and enjoy music and have a good conversation instead of being, ooh, scared, we're on YouTube. So, yeah, check that out. This thing is silly. It honestly should cost more. It doesn't make any sense. I've done $3,000 tube amps for like headphones, and it's like, this is expensive. It does a good job on headphones though, I guess. But now we're like, all right, this does a good job on headphones. Good. It's not designed for headphones. It's nice of them to give you that. But this is fucking silly. American-made remote control bias adjustment made of glass. I would get it honestly in silver, just because I feel like black is a little bit too, although it's kind of etchy. Edgy? Not etchy. Etchy is, no. Yeah, the only complaints I have is I'd like it so that when I powered it off, by the way, this does come on very dim when you turn it on. When you go to adjust it, it gets brighter. This shouldn't be on, or that should be the only thing that's on, and that should be off. But that's indicating where the button is. So that should definitely be off when you're in standby mode, and so should that. Of course, I can't tell if it's off right now. Oh, wait, it's not showing an input. It's off. So yeah, actually, I'm going to put it back on. There is a little LED, I think, under each of the tubes, because they're glowing on the bottom, and then they actually do physically... Wait a second. They actually are physically glowing on the top. So, yarg. And you can see that is the dim, and then when you go to adjust it, bam! It's like adjust me, baby. But anyway, wallpapers, both of them in the wallpaper hoard, including every wallpaper I've ever done. Patreon subscribe, to see reviews early, participate in yard sales, where you can buy some of the Black Ice stuff that I've sent to me that they're like, here, use this to get to Munich. So thank you to them for that. And again, the Sound Demo Oasis for where I'm going to be testing speakers. This actually comes out pretty nice with all the lights off down here. It's dramatic. $10 a month gets you in the private behind-the-scenes Telegram chat where you can buy, sell, trade gear, and the swap meet that's attached. You get into that for life. But yeah, if you want to ask me questions, you definitely want to be in the $10 chat. And if you're in that long enough, you're in any of my support things long enough, you'll eventually get into a lifetime chat, which I don't mention usually. It's kind of like the secret chat, where if you've supported me to a certain amount, that's it. You're in for life, baby. In it for life. And there's actually more people there now than there are on the $10 chat, which is kind of confusing. But anyway, I'm done. You're done. Thank you to Black Ice for sending me all this cool shit. Let's keep going.